Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear viewers. Welcome back to AI Deen Vision, where we explore important topics affecting Muslims worldwide. Today we're addressing a question that Muslims frequently encounter in contemporary discourse. Is Islam compatible with democracy? This question carries significant weight in our increasingly globalized world, where Muslims live under various political systems and engage with diverse governance models. Many Muslims find themselves caught between competing narratives. On one hand, some suggest that Islam mandates a specific political system called Khilafah that is fundamentally incompatible with democratic principles. On the other hand, others argue that core Islamic values align perfectly with democratic ideals. The truth, as we'll explore today, requires a more nuanced understanding. In this video, we'll examine this complex question from multiple angles. The fundamental principles of both Islamic governance and democracy. Historical examples of governance in Islamic civilization, areas of compatibility and tension between Islamic principles and democratic systems, how Muslims can approach political participation in contemporary societies. Our goal is not to provide a simplistic answer, but to offer clarity that empowers you to form a well-informed perspective based on authentic Islamic teachings. Let's begin by establishing some foundational concepts. Before we can address whether Islam is compatible with democracy, we need to clearly define what we mean by both Islam and democracy. Both terms encompass broad concepts that have evolved over time and been interpreted in various ways. What is democracy? Democracy, at its core, means rule by the people. It's a system where citizens hold power through voting, representation, and participation in governance. However, democracy isn't a monolithic concept. It exists along a spectrum with different forms. Direct democracy, citizens vote directly on policies and laws. Representative democracy, citizens elect officials who make decisions on their behalf. Constitutional democracy, power is distributed among different branches of government with constitutional limits. Modern democracies typically incorporate several key principles: regular, free, and fair elections, protection of human rights and civil liberties, rule of law applied equally to all citizens, checks and balances on government power, separation of powers between legislative, executive, and judicial branches, pluralism that allows for diverse political parties and viewpoints. It's crucial to understand that democracy is more than just elections. It's a complex system with philosophical underpinnings about human rights, individual freedoms, and the source of political legitimacy. What is the Islamic political system? When discussing Islamic governance, the term Khilafah, caliphate, often arises. Historically, the Khilafah refers to the political leadership that emerged after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wisal. The Arabic word khalifa means successor or representative. Islamic governance is guided by several fundamental principles. Sovereignty belongs to Allah. The ultimate authority in determining what is lawful and unlawful rests with Allah through divine revelation, Quran and Sunnah. This is known as Hakimiyyah. Shura, consultation. The Quran emphasizes the importance of consultation in decision-making. Allah commands in Surah al-Shura 42:38. And those who respond to their Lord and establish prayer and whose affair is determined by consultation among themselves. Justice, ADL. Establishing justice is a paramount objective of Islamic governance. The Quran states, "Indeed Allah commands justice and good conduct." 1690. Protection of rights. Islamic governance aims to protect 5 essential elements: maqasid al-shariah, religion, life, intellect, lineage, and property. Accountability. Leaders are accountable to Allah and to the people they govern. The concept of amr bil ma'ruf wa nahi an al-munkar, enjoining good and forbidding evil, ensures accountability. The historical implementation of these principles varied greatly across different periods and regions of Islamic civilization. The early Rashidun Caliphate, 632-661 CE, is often cited as the exemplary model, but even this period saw variations in leadership styles and governance approaches. To fully understand Islamic political thought, we must examine its historical development. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam established the first Islamic polity in Madinah, which was neither a monarchy nor a democracy in the modern sense, but incorporated principles of consultation, justice, and accountability. After the Prophet's death, the Muslim community faced its first political challenge: selecting a successor. This process for the first 4 caliphs, Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu, Hazrat Usman radiallahu anhu, and Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, involved varying degrees of consultation, consensus building, and pledge of allegiance, bay'ah, from the community. The Rashidun Caliphate, 632-661 CE, represents what many scholars consider the ideal Islamic governance model. Key features included: leaders were selected through consultation among community representatives, caliphs were accountable to the people and often subjected to public questioning. The bay'ah, Pledge of Allegiance, acted as a social contract between ruler and ruled. A consultative council, Shura, advised the caliph on matters of governance. Consider how the second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, described his relationship with the people. "If you see deviation in me, correct me." This illustrates the principle of accountability that was central to early Islamic governance. As Islamic civilization expanded, governance models evolved. The Umayyad, 661-750 CE, and Abbasid, 750-1258 CE dynasties moved toward hereditary succession while maintaining some Islamic principles of governance. Later empires like the Ottomans, 1299-1922 CE, developed complex administrative systems influenced by both Islamic principles and regional customs. Throughout Islamic history, political theories evolved to address changing circumstances. Scholars like al-Mawardi, 972-1058 CE, and Ibn Khaldun, 1332-1406 CE, developed sophisticated political philosophies that interpreted Islamic principles in light of their historical contexts. This historical diversity shows that Islam does not mandate a single, fixed political system. Rather, it provides principles that can be implemented through various governance structures appropriate to different times and places. Despite differences in philosophical foundations, several key areas of overlap exist between Islamic governance principles and democratic values. Consultation, Shura. The principle of Shura, or consultation, is central to Islamic governance. The Quran mentions it as a praiseworthy quality of the believers. This aligns with democratic emphasis on participation and representation. While the mechanisms differ, both systems value including the community in decision-making processes. Scholar Rachid Ghannouchi argues, the Islamic system of governance based on Shura realizes the essence of democracy, which is the rule of the people through choosing their rulers and holding them accountable. Social contract and consent. In Islamic political thought, the bay'ah, Pledge of Allegiance, functions as a social contract between the ruler and the governed. This resonates with democratic concepts of the social contract and consent of the governed. Both systems recognize that legitimacy comes at least partially from the people's acceptance of leadership. Accountability. Islamic governance emphasizes the accountability of rulers before both Allah and the people they govern. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Each of you is a shepherd, and each of you will be questioned about those under your care." This parallels democratic emphasis on accountability through elections, free press, and institutional checks. Rule of law. Both systems uphold the principle that no one, including leaders, is above the law. In Islam, even the caliph is subject to divine law, shariah. Similarly, constitutional democracies emphasize that officials must adhere to established laws and constitutional principles. 1. Protection of rights. Islamic governance aims to protect fundamental rights derived from maqasid al-shariah, objectives of Islamic law. Similarly, democracies emphasize the protection of civil liberties and human rights. While the source and scope of these rights may differ, both systems prioritize defending the dignity and essential freedoms of individuals. Justice, ADL, is mentioned throughout the Quran as a central objective of Islamic governance. Democratic systems likewise emphasize equal treatment under the law and fairness in social institutions. Both traditions recognize that legitimate governance must be just. While there are important areas of compatibility, there are also significant philosophical differences between Islamic governance principles and certain aspects of liberal democracy. Source of sovereignty. The most fundamental difference lies in the source of sovereignty. In Islamic thought, ultimate sovereignty belongs to Allah. Humans are trustees who implement divine guidance. In liberal democracy, sovereignty is often understood to rest with the people, who can theoretically legislate on any matter by majority will. This tension raises the question, can the will of the majority override divine law? Islamic scholars have varied responses to this question. Scope of legislation. Related to sovereignty is the scope of human legislation. Islamic governance distinguishes between immutable divine laws and flexible areas where human reasoning applies. Modern democracies generally do not recognize limits to legislative authority beyond constitutional constraints. However, some scholars note that constitutions in democracies function similarly to Sharia by establishing boundaries that majority rule cannot violate: religious versus secular authority. Islamic governance traditionally does not separate religious and political authority completely. Many modern democracies emphasize separation of church and state, yet this distinction is not absolute. Many democracies have varying relationships with religion, from strict secularism, France, to countries with established churches, England, or religious parties, Germany. Individual rights versus collective good. Liberal democracy often prioritizes individual rights and freedoms. Islamic governance may sometimes prioritize collective moral and spiritual well-being. This creates tension around issues like freedom of expression when it conflicts with religious sensibilities. Cultural contexts. Modern democracy developed primarily in Western contexts with specific historical experiences. Applying democratic principles in different cultural and historical settings requires adaptation rather than wholesale transplantation. Muslim scholars and thinkers have developed various approaches to reconcile Islamic principles with modern political realities. Islamic democracy. Some scholars advocate for Islamic democracy, arguing that democratic mechanisms can implement Islamic principles of shura, justice, and accountability. They suggest that Islam provides the moral framework within which democratic procedures operate. Malaysian scholar Anwar Ibrahim states, "Democracy is not alien to Islam. Indeed, the idea of the people's voice being central to political life is a traditional Islamic concept." 1. Civil state with Islamic reference. This approach envisions a state that is neither theocratic nor completely secular. It respects democratic procedures while acknowledging Islamic values as a primary source of legislation. Tunisia's post-revolution constitution reflects elements of this approach. 2. Maqasid-based approach. Some contemporary scholars focus on maqasid al-shariah, the higher objectives of Islamic law, rather than specific historical forms. They argue that governance systems should be evaluated based on how well they achieve these objectives, protecting faith, life, intellect, family, and property, rather than their outward forms. Citizenship model. This approach emphasizes the concept of muwatana, citizenship, in which Muslims participate as equal citizens in modern nation-states while maintaining their religious identity. It focuses on shared civic values compatible with Islamic ethics. Minority fiqh, jurisprudence. For Muslims living as minorities in non-Muslim majority countries, scholars have developed fiqh al-aqaliyat, jurisprudence for minorities. This framework guides Muslims on how to participate meaningfully in democratic processes while maintaining their religious obligations. For contemporary Muslims, several practical considerations emerge. Contextual understanding. The Quran and Sunnah provide principles rather than a detailed blueprint for governance. Applying these principles requires understanding the specific context of time and place. Distinguishing between means and ends. Democratic mechanisms, like elections, parliaments, and constitutions, can be viewed as means to achieve Islamic ends of justice, consultation, and welfare. The means may change while the ends remain constant. Gradual reform. Islamic tradition recognizes the concept of tadarruj, gradualism. Political change that brings society closer to Islamic ideals need not be revolutionary but can occur through incremental improvement. Ethical participation. Muslims in diverse political systems can participate ethically by advocating for justice, opposing corruption, and promoting human dignity. These activities fulfill Islamic obligations regardless of the specific system. Flexibility and ijtihad. Islamic jurisprudence allows for ijtihad, independent reasoning, to address new circumstances. Scholarly interpretation can adapt Islamic principles to contemporary realities. As we conclude this exploration of Islam and democracy, several key points emerge. First, Islam provides principles of governance rather than mandating a specific political system. These principles, including shura, consultation, adl, justice, and accountability, are applicable across different times and contexts. Second, while there are philosophical differences between Islamic governance and liberal democracy, particularly regarding sovereignty and the scope of legislation, there are also significant areas of compatibility in values like consultation, accountability, and protection of rights. Third, Contemporary Muslims have developed diverse approaches to navigate the relationship between Islamic principles and modern democratic systems, demonstrating the dynamic nature of Islamic political thought. Rather than asking whether Islam is compatible with democracy as a yes or no question, perhaps we should ask, how can Muslims implement Islamic principles of good governance in their contemporary contexts? This approach recognizes both the timeless values of Islam and the changing circumstances in which Muslims live. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "The best of your rulers are those whom you love and who love you, who pray for you and you pray for them." This hadith reminds us that the quality of governance ultimately depends on the relationship between leaders and the community, a principle that transcends specific political systems. As Muslims navigate these complex questions, we should approach them with intellectual humility, recognizing that Islamic tradition contains diverse perspectives that can inform our understanding. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of Islam and democracy. We hope this discussion provides insight and clarity on this important topic. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to AI Deen Vision for more content that explores contemporary issues from an Islamic perspective. Allah Hafiz.